we're finally back in the garage after we've installed most of the carpet, well, all of the carpet. We just have a few finishing touches to put down on it. And I think what we're gonna do next is maybe install the dash, and well, before we do that, we'll fix our speed gauge cluster here. We finally have our 9K tack in there, and it works great. Haven't had any problems with it so far. But the problem I have with this is the tack sticks, or the speedometer sticks. It'll come up to speed at like 40 miles an hour, 50 miles an hour, and it'll stay there, and once I come down to 0, it still sticks there. And I think the vibrations from the car after a while finally like shake it down, but it's just very inconsistent and not very accurate to what my speed is. It's not totally the gauge's fault, it's really my fault, to be honest. S13 clusters are really finicky when you try to take them apart. So this is an S13 gauge cluster, dual overhead cam, because it's got a 7K red line and it reads in 10s rather than 15, 25, 35, and so on and so forth. My problem was, as I was doing my customization, I thought that I needed to disassemble this speedometer as far as taking this needle out and taking the plate off. I don't need to do that at all. I just need to take this bezel out, unscrew the speedo from those 4 screws in the back, and unplug the odometer reading. And the entire thing comes out as a complete piece. So when you try to take just the needle out of the speedometer, it's a very bad idea. I've searched online and it has the needle is magnetic. There's a magnetic piece in there that's very accurately aligned from the factory, so when you try to disengage it from where it's at, it loses its place or it gets shoved down deeper into the port. And I don't understand the entire logistics behind it, but long story short, don't pull the needle out, otherwise it's gonna stick and it's not gonna go back in properly. So this speedo comes up and down really light, doesn't take much force to bring it up, and then it comes back down on its own. Even if I try to hold it upside down, it comes straight back because of the magnetic piece in there. Now mine, because I took the needle out, I'm not going to do it here, but I'll bring it up and it just kind of sticks unless you lift it up and it comes back down. It's kind of a bummer because I've gone through about 3 different kinds of clusters until I finally figured out what I was doing wrong. So learn after my mistakes and don't pull that needle out. And there we go. 1 gauge cluster, all disassembled in one piece. This one sticks really bad. Does not come back straight down, so we're gonna bin this. And there we go. Now we have a beautifully working, fully functional S13 gauge cluster. So one of the things that's kind of a given with these S13s, because they're so old, is the fact that there's a lot of vibrations. But the fact that we have the dash out and everything kind of put together in a way that allows us to kind of see where those vibrations are, allows us to pinpoint them and insulate them so that they no longer vibrate. So we've got some foam window seal that we're going to use to take care of all of that. It's likely you'll never be able to chase down every little vibration in the car. Don't let me be the one to tell you it's impossible. But when you're running what are essentially solid motor mounts, you can't have your cake and eat it. There's a little spot in here right above the heater core where the vent goes into warm the windshield. This part here. I took the tubing off so that I could insulate it in there because I think I had a vibration coming from there, so I'm just going to line it up where the vent meets the heater core. Alright, so I've killed quite a bit of time putting on insulation. Gone about replacing it all up here in the dash and way down underneath there, and going in places where I can kind of feel some plastic where it's really close to other plastic and can potentially cause a rattle. Insulated all of that, and I think we're going to give it a go, start the car and see what it sounds like. So it sounds as if I've insulated or removed at least most of all of the rattles and squeaks in there. There's a little squeak that I hear, but it sounds like it's coming more towards underneath the steering column on the interior, so probably something that I can get to later. It's getting kind of dark out, so I think that I'm going to go ahead and put the dash back in. That way I can get all my that way I can get all my electronics set up and we can worry about other things rather than the interior. Although, it's not too bad. It's just really time consuming and I want to start driving this car, taking it out to events and just enjoying it. The dash will go in the same way it came out. You'll have more room to work if you drop the steering column, which is only a couple nuts and bolts. It always helps to have a friend to help you out, even if they are just emotional support. Projects that take time can wear down your motivation. Having a like-minded friend to help you tackle that project can keep you focused on the goal inside your head. Whatever you do, don't let up. Alright, the dash is in and installed. Now I'm going to install our gauge cluster, the bezel, all of our gauges and our radio, the glove box, all of our panels that we need for this to be a complete front full interior. Took way longer than expected, but the dash is finally in. So I've installed the cluster bezel at least 3 different times. I was kind of worried because my dash lights weren't turning on, nor were my climate control lights turning on, and I was worried that I had unplugged something. I looked it up online because everything seemed to be plugged in, and I thought my TC was burnt out. Took it out, checked it, nothing seemed to be burnt out. So I just checked my fuses and it turns out the tail lamp fuse was out. So if your dash lights aren't working and you can't figure out why, always go for the simple solutions and try not to make more work for yourself than necessary. New fuse in, cluster lights work, and I think I'm gonna call it a night for tonight. It's getting late and I'm getting hungry, so I'll see you guys on the next day. It's another day and we're finally back at it working on the Teal 240 because we ran out of time last time. And so today what we're gonna be doing, since we didn't get to it, is we are going to be, we're going to be fixing up all of our gauges in here, wiring these back up and putting them back into place, because when I took out the dash, my wiring got a little messed up, so we're going to be working on that. And I'm not sure I'll have time for much else, but we'll see what we can get done. I'm redoing the wiring for my aftermarket gauges while everything is guided and open for access. It's worth it to check over your work for weak points that may be a reliability problem in the future. Taking the time to look into the small details may not always net results, but it will help to ensure you quality time while enjoying your ride in the event that you do find something. Well, it looks like I'm out of time for today. I've got most of all of my gauges set back in and wired back up. My gauge setup isn't anything special, it's just a plate that my dad helped me fab up, and so if it weren't for the fact that my dad helped me with this piece, I'd probably go for a street faction piece, but it's got some sentimental value to me, so I'm gonna keep it. And then I think the last thing we have to do is set this center console in, hook up our radio, and move on to the next thing. Look at that. Full finished interior. Well, not full, but it's looking pretty OEM and quality. At least I think it's looking pretty OEM. The next thing I'm gonna do is go about mounting my boost controller switch. This thing has kind of been sitting in the car wherever it wants to sit, kind of loosely, not hard mounted anywhere. I do enjoy this little red fighter pilot switch, however, this little square base is a little too big for me to mount it where I'd like to put it, so I went out and bought another switch that's a little smaller, should serve us well. This will be my boost controller instead. And my 2 options, I wanted to place it somewhere not too conspicuous, so hiding it somewhere on the dash controls would be my best option. My 2 options being to the left of the wheel, either right here or right here where I have a blank. And Desiree convinced me I should do the blank rather than put a hole in my perfectly clean bezel, because these may be a little difficult to find, but it is a blank and it's a smaller piece than this entire cluster bezel is. So we're gonna drill a hole in here, mount the boost controller right there, so that we have easy access to about 7 more pounds of boost. So here we go. So before we start drilling this, we should really measure this up and make sure we're like directly centered up, because you don't want your switch to be all off center. So we're gonna go ahead and just measure up right where center needs to be, and just make sure we get a good measurement before we start drilling. That smells. Really glad I measured this up. Really glad. Let's see if it'll fit. It's quite a big hole, but it fits. Look at that. So this isn't gonna work for me tonight. It will work eventually. I just need to get a tool. I need a Dremel to grind these ribs back to where they need to be. I don't have a file or anything on hand, so we're gonna go ahead and half mount it on here, and then I'll come back later and Dremel those ribs out so that our switch can be hard mounted, and that'll be taken care of. And then we can get over to finishing the rest of the interior. We can vacuum it all out, put the seat back in, and start working on other things. So this is the basic idea of what I want to do. It's not hard mounted at all, and it's a little ugly. Actually, it's very ugly, but it's the only thing that fits without me having to cut into bigger pieces that are pretty clean, and I don't want to have to worry about chasing another one of those down. If I have to chase another one of these down, I don't mind. I just don't want to have to chase another bezel down. So this will work for now until I can grind down those ribs in the back. It stays in place pretty well for what it is. Ooh! Ooh! Guys, this interior is really coming together. May not seem like much to you guys, but this is coming a long way from no carpet, basically nothing in this car. If you were following this car about almost a year ago, we got carpet, we got all these interior panels in here now. This is just gorgeous. Of course, it's a mess. All that dirt, all that right down there will get cleared out. I was worried I was gonna have to get the clips off the carpet, and I may do this down the road. If any of you have taken apart 240 carpet, you'll know that there's some plastic overhang clips which kind of hangs onto a little pinch weld on the car on the inside. But I've trimmed it down a little bit, and this cover or guard on top seems to hold it down pretty well, so I think we'll be good without it. I can't tell you guys how stoked I am about the interior of this car. This is a really big piece of me really getting to love this car. It's kind of coming together as far as what I wanted to do with an S chassis. So it's not much. Really, it's just carpet and cleaning up the rest of the interior, mounting everything where it needs to go cleanly. So we still have a long way to go, but it's finally getting there, and I think once we get this thing back on the road, I'm gonna love this car that much more. So this interior overhaul process has been quite an endeavor. It's not that it's really been challenging and difficult. It's just been very tedious and very nitpicky, because with an interior, well, I'm very nitpicky with the interior right now because I absolutely hated having the gutted car. No insulation, no heat, no blower motor of any kind. And so it just really bugged me not having all of that stuff in this car. And that's the main reason that I didn't really like this car before. I mean, I liked it, but it didn't really make me fall in love with it. So I really tried to go as far as I could as far as all the little details, cutting the carpet right, making sure I had every little piece in the interior insulated and all of that. And I'm pretty happy with how it's come out so far. We've got pretty much all the interior put back together. We just don't have the passenger seat in there. I've got everything cleared out. We'll give this a vacuum before we put the seat back in. Clean the windows because those are absolutely nasty, and give this car a good wash. But like I said, all the little details as far as putting this hook back in once the carpet goes in. Forgive the glove box, but I even noticed that my old dash, it's very hard to see, but this little circle dot thing here has a bulb in it, as well as a bulb inside the glove box itself. As I was sorting through my garage, I kind of looked at my old dash, the old dash inside this car, and I noticed it had a few plugs on it, so I was very curious to know what they are. And it turns out this 240, or at least the old dash had, must have been in an SE car, because it's a HUD dash, which means it was probably in a coupe if it came from an 89 or 90 car, something like that. I think, could be wrong, I'm just kind of speculating. But we had these bulbs on the passenger side as well as the driver's side. I didn't really know it, but the driver's side ended up having a foot bulb as well, if you will. I always had this empty space here, this empty square, and I always just figured it was a plug or something to go in there. So I was really happy and surprised when I found this light piece on the other car, or the other interior pieces, So even though I don't have a plug for this, I put it in there anyway, and maybe I'll mock up something to route some power in there to turn on when I turn on my lights. It's a really small and non-functional thing, but these cars are getting so old and sometimes hard to find parts for, where those little bits and pieces just kind of really make me happy finding all that stuff in there. Now, as much as I'd love to continue working on this car tonight, it's pretty late, and I think that I'll come back to it in the morning with the vacuum and finish installing the seat and see how this thing really turns out. And I cannot wait, guys. It's gonna look so good. I'm so pumped, and I hope you guys are too. Alright guys, now that we have the interior set up, I say it's time to give this car a wash because it is absolutely filthy. And we'll vacuum out the carpet and get this thing ready for a little meet together tonight. Meet together, a little get together tonight. So let's go. Apartment. So on the way back, my brake pedal got super stiff, so it didn't really feel like I lost any brakes. It felt more like I had no power brakes, so like the vacuum hose came off the brake booster. So I'm gonna check it out and see what's going on. After a quick look through, I couldn't really find anything that stood out to me as far as the brake system, or having super stiff brakes. Maybe it's the check valve. So I don't really have time to look into it right now. The brakes still work, they're just non-assisted. So we're gonna go ahead and put in the seat, or the passenger side seat, so that we can make it to the Freddy's meet tonight, and so Desiree can ride with me. Alright guys, the seat's in. Now it's time to go party. And that's the end of this episode of Be Tailored. It was a really long overhaul process, big project. Took me, I think, a couple of weeks. Took a long time, it was a lot of work, but it was well worth it. I love the car so much more. The carpets kind of dampen the sound of the exhaust on the inside. It's still kind of a tin can in the back, obviously, but I think I'm gonna keep that rear end gutted. Really happy with how the black carpet is. I'm pretty happy. I got my carpet from Stock Interiors. I got double backing on it. It's super thick stuff. You might have an easier time trying to form the carpet and cut it up if you get the base model on that. But I'm really happy with the way it turned out. The seats look great. Everything looking black in the interior makes the car really come together as a whole. I wasn't really happy with my last S13, at least the carpet. It was old, kind of moldy, stained, and it didn't really complement the car like it should have. Let me know if this video helped you guys out in any way possible. Please leave a like if you guys got anything out of the video, and consider subscribing. I'll see you guys next time. Have a great day.